But in the interest of time, let's get into the during testing. So, I do not ever want to understate how important this first bullet is, because it unfortunately has occurred, and when it escapes detection, it can be a bit of a problem for everyone involved, most especially the student who just sat through a test. So, you as building coordinators have to have the accountability in ensuring that the appropriate grade test that they are taking is their grade. Some things happen. It could be both either when you are unpacking the materials, it could be when we shipped the materials, it could be simply that they got caught up in some sort of a roster change, I don't know. But what you don't want to have is that kid to then go through all 3 sections and have had the wrong test. So please take it upon yourself and know that there's always just one situation that then causes great alarm, and you need to make sure that that does not happen. Then also, any type of an irregularity that occurs during testing, you guys need to fill out the irregularity reports. Or your test administrator can be the person actually filling it out, but you're involved with the irregularity report. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And you also need to ensure that the materials are being tracked during the testing window, and follow your schedule, and make sure your test administrators and you all review the allowable resources. Okay? Because then during testing, if you're now in the room and you realized you had not planned accordingly, and you realize a whole bunch of stuff is either in the classroom or on the walls, and you now are seeing it's not an allowable resource, egats, you've just compromised perhaps an entire room of 20 kids. Okay? So on the allowable resources, and so the WDE did this, and it's great because it really clears up any ambiguity, and now it's very specific. One thing though I called out on this bullet, because I know from my own kids' experience, the TI 83 plus calculator is not allowed. And that's a very common calculator. I know my son has one. So any of the algebraic calculators are not allowed. So be aware of that ahead of time. That's probably the big one. That, and also the word walls in classrooms. Either cover them up or take them down. So those are kind of the 2 gotchas. We made a few minor changes on this form. Also gave it a back page. So it is now a 2-page document. On the front side is IRR, and on the back, new this year, is summary not tested. Okay? So on the front, all that we really changed was adding WISER ID and test serial number. Okay? We were getting such great IRRs last year, but then no information as to who the student it affected was. So that if it involved manipulation on our end within the system to get in and do something on behalf of that, I didn't know who I was working with. I had to call you guys. And a lot of times, and I'm really nervous about the spring break schedule this year, that might be in a situation where now you're away and the school's closed and it's spring break. So still eloquent detail about the incident, but also please, WISER ID involved. And if it's multiple student, I need all WISERs involved. Also on the kids' grades 3 through 5, if the test booklet is part of the incident in that it was compromised, for example, there is a serial number on the front, slightly shifted to the right of the middle of the page. It's a numeric digit only. That's the serial number of the test booklet. That too is helpful for us because we can then pull that in our scanning system and get it. Okay? So if that is known for specifically the kids get the 3 through 5, go ahead and indicate it. Now, there's a serial number on all the test booklets. If for any reason also related to the actual subject of the test, for the grades 6 through 8, the kids responding and putting their answers on the answer doc. If for some reason, though, the incident involved their test booklet, you can also include it. Okay? But usually the irregularities that we need as it relates to getting into a system to further, investigate to support whatever happened is related to then getting the score extracted. So I care more about where the score's been recorded. So using this form, again, you as the building coordinator should immediately notify your district coordinator. They need to be involved just for your own CYA. Okay? Even if it's just letting them know. Because if we being ETS, have to also engage the state's going to want to first start and make sure where's the district coordinator in all this. Okay? So think of it as test administrator to you, building coordinator to your district coordinator. Any one of those at that point is going to be who comes and gets ETS involved. We then, based on what the incident is and if we need to, will also involve WDE. Questions? Now on the back side of this, which I don't have a slide for, is your summary not tested. And this is a new form that also is there for your protection. And here what we want you to do and include is any students that did not test. Use that and go ahead, question?
So does that include the students that have moved out? Do you want a list of those?
If they're testing elsewhere in the state, no. If they were on your roster at the time and now they're not, yes.
So I'm just looking at the form, knowing that we'll have a lot more than that because we have about 25.
Xerox it.
You're good with that?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Same question?
That was my question.
Okay. So what you want to do, use the form to ensure that somewhere they're accounted for. So meaning that if the state thought they were in your district and they're no longer, and they can't be accounted for anywhere else in any other district because they're now not going to be testing, you want somehow WDE to know that. That's the rule of thumb of who you're putting on that form.
My question was the response. When I went in, there was no way,
Sorry.
I think my question centers around the Toms. When I went in to update, there's no way to delete a student.
No.
Pushing them to another district.
Correct.
So you're going to get a pre-ID booklet.
Yep.
And in the past, we've put those in the unscorable. Because they've moved out of state, there's no way to test them.
Right. So.
Now we include them on this form.
Yep.
So there's accountability.
Yep.
Okay.
You answered your own question, but again, always, rule of thumb is if you believe that the state needs to know about this kid for whatever reason, because they will count against you, put them on that form.
So they will still count against?
I believe not, right? The moving out of state, they don't.
No. Here's a question that came up from the other in Evanston that was good. What if, Lauren, the student only took one section of math and didn't take science?
If they took the remaining 2 sections of that subject, I don't care. But if they missed the whole subject, I really care. Because there's going to be a score that's then going to roll up for science in this case. But if they then have no score in science, and yet they should have had a score in science, you're going to want to explain that, and that would be a good reason to put on the form. That actually helps ETS when we then do a lot of manual checking and ensuring that each and every kid has a score. We'll now have this form, which is where we came up with it, but it works for everyone. We now will know and say, oh, I'm not going to go and chase this guy down. They actually never took anything. So again, wrapping up irregularity reports, and again, we refer to it always as the IRR. It's a mouthful, I know. Other reasons and or things to think that IRR is going to include are here. These are always the same reasons. Again, this is going to come down to you providing really good training to your test administrators for them to understand and know automatically what would constitute an irregularity of any kind. Again, the student becoming ill, and we all know that that can involve blood or like excrement of sorts, and I know everyone's nodding their head. Trust me, it happens. So I just want you to know this last bullet, don't return it to us. Just destroy it, okay? I think I already gave you the scenario. This would be also an example where you need to engage the customer support team because now in continuing and helping that kid complete their testing, and again, they're not going to start over with section 1. That's where they vomited, perhaps. But you got to get this kid tested for sections 2 and 3. You need that kid to have the same form. You might have already used up all your Form 2s. That's where you're going to get Wyoming customer support on the phone and say, dude, I need like Form 2 like now. No problem. Coming next day air. You'll get it tomorrow. Okay? But an irregularity report is going to be filled in with that student's WISER so that we know when I now have 2 different pieces of answers documented for this one kid, I have on the IRR what happened to what kid. Aha, I know how to rectify that. All good to go.
And you're the one transferring the responses to the new form.
Say again?
The building coordinator or test administrator is the one transferring the responses, not the kid.
Correct. Can you state that again for the mic, though? Because that is a really key.
So the building coordinator or the test administrator is the one that needs to transfer the answers to the new form, not
Yes,
the kid.
correct.
And if they threw up in the middle of section 1, they're just in section 1.
Well, let's, a good scenario is, again, if you're working with that 80-minute window as a suggested, hypothetical time, and whatever happened, it might have been a vomiting situation, is resolved within, and they can come back, get that kid back in that test window and finish, if they can. If you have, especially if you have another extra book and they can keep going with no interruption. Bloody nose is even maybe a better example because that can sometimes be resolved. They just go to the bathroom, they're going to get it resolved. Now, let's try to get that kid finished. Absolutely. Get them back into the test room and finish so that they don't compromise all of section 1. Again, good judgment. That's all you need. Security. You have this in your BCM. It's on page 36. So this is new this year, also put together by WDE. Not required, but highly recommended, and they did the work for you. They created it. So rip it on out, copy it if you need. What this is doing is now ensuring that your test materials are accounted for at all times. Notice there are 2 columns for signatures, both in and out. Your test administrator and the building coordinator. So you have a responsibility as the test administrator to know who and where those test materials are, okay, by using something like this. This is not a required form. You can, in fact, if you already have something in place and have been using it, by all means, that's great, and we thank you for doing so. But if you did not have anything in place, I would recommend using this form, and this way, again, you do know at all times where those materials are during the testing window. Okay? This will be also something that when the WDE is going around and doing their observations, you need to have something in place. If you're not using this form, make sure you have something in place that you are using, because that will be what they look for. Okay? So that wraps up the during testing section. Any questions? All right, let's get to everyone's favorite part, after testing.